Kathryn Fagg, thank you so much for joining us today on our Leaders Unleashed series.
Thanks, Jo.
Looking at your background, Kathryn, it strikes me that you've been operating in some very male-dominated industries. For example, you were president at logistics company Linfox, president of BlueScope Steel for Asia. I'd be interested in your experience working in those male-dominated industries.
Jo, I started my career when it was studying chemical engineering at the University of Queensland. So very early on, I was in an environment where there were a lot of men. And of course, doing engineering meant that I loved maths and physics. And therefore, when I started work as a petroleum engineer for Esso, it was a landscape that I was familiar with. And as I went through my career, I found that I actually loved working in engineering-oriented organisations. And as you say, that's what I've done for the last 10 years, most recently with Linfox, where I was president of the fast-moving consumer goods business, and before that with BlueScope Steel, where I was most recently the president of Asia for BlueScope Steel.
What do you see are the challenges for women in traditionally male-dominated fields?
Working in those industries which are very male-oriented, you're inevitably going to be a minority. And it can be challenging being a minority, whether that's because you're a woman or for some other reason. But I think what in the end you have to really focus on is doing a good job and really enjoying the work, because there are going to be differences. And you have to be good at what you do. You have to know how to be able to work with other people. And you can typically do that by showing a lot of respect for other people, but in the end you've just got to really enjoy it, because it is different.
Do you think things have changed much since when you first started with Esso until now?
So when I first started with Esso was actually right at the forefront of bringing women into professional roles in the oil and gas industry. So early on I was exposed to an organisation that was very at the front of what was going on. So that was really, really fortunate for me. Has it changed? I'd say, Jo, I think it's a real pity it hasn't changed a lot more than it has, because 25 years ago or so, we thought there'd be a lot more advancement of women, and that really hasn't happened at the pace that we all hoped. Having said that, I do think there's a lot of momentum now that the community is saying, actually, we do need to get more women into leadership roles, and I'm really pleased about that.
What was it about the Hunger Project that attracted you to the organisation initially?
The reasons I initially became really attracted to the Hunger Project, I guess, were threefold. First of all, having spent time in Asia, I was acutely aware that, particularly in India, I was acutely aware that there were people who were really severely disadvantaged by the circumstances in which they lived. And that was, as someone who had been very fortunate in terms of where I was born and the opportunities I'd been given, that I had a real responsibility to do more than I was currently doing. I don't think you can go to India with all how special it is, and it's joyful and wonderful, but it's so confronting to look at the poverty in India and say, I need to do more. And so I wanted to do more. And then I got introduced to the Hunger Project by a number of people that I really like and respect enormously. And there is nothing like knowing about a cause or an organisation through other people whose opinion you really value. And that happened for me with the Hunger Project. And then when I looked into the Hunger Project, I actually really liked the model that it pursues, like its three pillars of raising responsibility of the community to take responsibility for their own outcomes, empowering women, and working with local government. I really believe those are the three pillars that really support strong development work. So it was a really lovely fit for me between the people and also the way the Hunger Project actually works. So I was really glad to get involved.
I'm interested to know, what impresses you most about the way the Hunger Project works and operates?
The thing that most impresses me is that it is a really clever model, because it really looks at how do human beings think and act, and how do we pull that together to get a really good outcome at a community level. So it's not about individuals, but it's about a whole community, and knowing that if you're talking about development, you have to be talking about the government as well. And the Hunger Project knits that all together in a very proven model, which means that it's both effective but very cost efficient as well. And one of the things I like about the Hunger Project is that it's been willing to go and test at how efficient they are. Now, we're lucky enough to work with McKinsey, and McKinsey have done the study in Uganda, which does look at the effectiveness and efficiency of the Hunger Project, and it compares very well to other work that is going on in the developing world.
Kathryn, you don't only contribute financially to the Hunger Project, but you also give very generously of your time as well. Can you tell us why?
If I look at the way I live my life, part of it is devoted to doing what we might call community service work or not-for-profit work. And I do that in a variety of ways. So I obviously give money, and I have the ability to give some money, but there's a number of organisations that I really strongly support as well in terms of putting time in to make a difference. And the Hunger Project is one of those. And I think it's just a choice in the end of saying, what do I feel particularly committed to, and where my time will really make a difference. I know there's lots of things I could do, but I really believe in the Hunger Project, so it's one that I'm very pleased to be involved in, and I really like the people in the Hunger Project. So it's a lot about the people and engaging with those people and working with those people that I enjoy.
Now, I know you have a trip coming up to Uganda shortly with the Hunger Project. How are you feeling about it?
There's lots of reasons I'm incredibly excited about going to Uganda. Of course, there's just seeing what the Hunger Project does on the ground, and having been in senior leadership roles, I know there's nothing as impactful as actually going to a site and really understanding what's going on and talking to the people. So I'm really excited about that. But I think Uganda is an incredibly interesting country. I mean, most of us think of Uganda in terms of political turmoil, which has clearly had a horrendous history. And yet since the mid-80s, it has in many ways been incredibly successful in improving the lot of many of its people, although so many people still live in acute poverty. But it's a really interesting country in terms of what it's done at a national and community level to improve the well-being of many of its people. And of course, everything would suggest Uganda is just a stunningly beautiful country. And so going to Africa, going to Uganda, it couldn't be better.
How important is the work that the Hunger Project does specifically with women for you?
Certainly the fact that the Hunger Project focuses on women was a really attractive element of it for me. I had done a lot of reading as to what is the most effective way to do development. And I remember a quote from Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time. And he said, decades and decades of study have shown us that the most effective tool for development is empowering women. So once we know that, I look, of course, go, well, who does that really well? Who looks at empowering women? So the aid organisations I've been involved in terms of giving money or support or whatever, tend to have had a focus on empowering women.
This leadership series is about sharing knowledge, and you've personally worked with some of the biggest organisations in Australia. What advice would you have for budding leaders?
In terms of a budding leader, I would first of all say it becomes really important to know what do you really, really love doing. Because the leadership journey can be quite a challenging journey. And in my case, for example, what I love doing is building and growing businesses and organisations. I love that. So you need to know what you really, really love doing. Because for me, leadership is about responsibility. And so you have to be willing to step up to the plate. And that it's much easier to do that if you really believe in what you're doing and that it's going to make a difference. So that's where I would start. And then I would go on and say it's really important to have different experiences and a real breadth of experiences. So I'm always encouraging younger women, for example, and younger men for that matter, to step outside their comfort zone, particularly when they're younger, and to move into other roles that will give them new experiences. In the case of women, for example, I would often say if you're in a corporate environment, move out of perhaps the functional areas and go into an operational role, and where the organisation and the business is really run from. That's the experience you need to get. And then finally, take risks. You've got to be willing to take risks and put yourself out there, and hopefully it will all go well. But if it doesn't, normally, guess what? It will be okay. The sun will still come up in the morning, and you've got to take those risks. And then you need to make sure that you're living a balanced life, so you've got the support, that you've got friends, you've got people you can go and talk to, so that you can lead a very full life.
Kathryn, thank you so much for your contribution to the Hunger Project and to our Leaders Unleashed series today.
Thanks a lot, Joanna. I've really enjoyed it.